But sometimes I still get a strong urge and I think to myself, it'd be nice to go back to that old habit. It'd be nice to go back to the bottle. It'd be nice to go back to that drug. It'd be nice to go back to the party. But I catch myself, I realize it's a fantasy and that's not part of my life anymore. That the life I've built up and the life that I'm building now is more important and worth more and gives me more satisfaction and fulfillment than a life in the party ever did or ever will or ever can. Dealing with urges and addiction is probably the most difficult thing that we can do in recovery, and it's one thing that we will all share in common when we get sober. And even if we don't get sober, even when we're in active addiction, what gnaws at us is the urge to continue the addictive behavior, and often we give into it. So in this video, I'm going to tell you how I deal with urges, and I'm going to give you one tool that you can take away and use in your own life. So I'm going to give you one tool that you can take away and use in your own life to deal with urges whenever they arise. But first, a little bit about myself. I have over 20 years of lived experience in active addiction, and I'm here to give back a little bit to others who might be struggling with addiction themselves. So I want you to get locked in while I dial this in. First, I want to tell you a little bit about my experience with urges. Now, I'm entering my second year of sobriety. I've been sober for a year, and I'm not going to lie to you. I still get strong urges to use drugs and alcohol and partake in negative habits. And the truth is, the urges will always be there. As far as I know, the urges will always be there with us along our path to recovery, no matter how far down the road we get. Because if I'm a year in and I'm still getting these strong urges, then I can assume that others who are 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road of recovery ahead of me are also getting the urges. But what I can say is that over time, the urges get less potent and they come less frequent. So the frequency of the urges becomes less and the potency of the urges dwindles over time. But sometimes I still get a strong urge and I think to myself, it'd be nice to go back to that old habit. It'd be nice to go back to the bottle. It'd be nice to go back to that drug. It'd be nice to go back to the party. But I catch myself, I realize it's a fantasy and that's not part of my life anymore. That the life I've built up and the life that I'm building now is more important and worth more and gives me more satisfaction and fulfillment than a life in the party ever did or ever will or ever can. So to get that off of my chest, the thing that really potentiates the urge and will lead to relapse is when we fantasize about the urges we have. So when we have our urges to do whatever, whether it's a bad habit, drinking, drugging, sex, porn, when we fantasize about following through with the urge, like what we would do in a scenario, hypothetical scenario in our head, we start imagining a hypothetical scenario in our head. We play into the urge, where the urge will take us, what we'll do with the urge. We start imagining a scenario and fantasizing. We start fantasizing about how it will feel, how good it'll feel, the pleasure we'll receive, the good side of the addiction, the habit, the routine. That's when the urges can get dangerous, is when we start holding them in our minds and we start giving them energy, mental and emotional energy, by playing them out through our minds in a fantasy. So we have to recognize that when we have an urge, probably one of the best things to do is to just acknowledge that we have the urge, because sometimes when the urge will come, we'll be unconscious of it. We're not entirely aware that we're in the middle of an urge, but once it comes, we can acknowledge it. Once we become aware of it and acknowledge it, we can drop it, let it go, and focus on something else. So directing our energy. Now, this is the tool that I want to give you, that I use myself and that I've used for over a year, and that's helped me in my recovery, and I believe I can attribute to my success this far. And it is sublimation, the tool of sublimation. Now, sublimation is simply, in psychology, sublimation is a defense mechanism. So when we have an innate drive or an incentive, such as a drive to have sex or a drive to eat or a drive to partake in a habit or whatever it may be, something natural to our, intrinsic to our biological drives, we will seek to have an outlet of that drive. Now, sublimation is a defense mechanism where we reroute that drive into another outlet. So for many of us, what we will do in recovery is we'll sublimate the urge or the drive or the incentive to use drugs, to abuse sex, to use pornography, to use alcohol. We'll sublimate that urge when the urge comes, and we'll transmute it by redirecting the energy into a creative pursuit. So for me, for example, what I'm doing right now, I had a strong urge today. I don't get them too often, but I had a strong urge today. So I got up out of so my urge came while I was watching a movie in bed. So I got up out of bed, I came into my living room, and I drafted a small bullet point script for a YouTube video. And now I'm recording the video here for you guys. And you guys are helping me sublimate my drive and my urge to go and participate in that old pattern of behavior that I'm so accustomed to. For example, creating a small script and then recording and speaking and diverting the energy from the urge into a creative pursuit that has a tangible result is letting me overcome the urge, and the urge dissipates. I don't even feel the urge to use anymore. I don't feel the urge that I was fantasizing a little bit, and I caught myself fantasizing, and that's why I'm talking about fantasizing here in this video, because I noticed that when I started fantasizing about the urge and how good it would feel in a hypothetical scenario, I noticed that would give weight to the urge, and the urge would stick around, and I'd start feeling a tense heaviness in my chest, like a feeling, like a pleasure feeling in my chest, like an anxiety feeling, that if I held on to that and if I keep feeding it with more fantasy, more fantastical thoughts, it'll grow and grow, and that's what will compel me to go and relapse. And that's generally what compels people to relapse, is playing into the fantasy and failing to sublimate the urge. Now, in psychology, sublimation, it's listed as a defense mechanism, but not all defense mechanisms are necessarily bad, and I believe everybody on one level or another enacts a defense mechanism in their lives. It's just how we deal with the stress and trauma of everyday life and interacting with people and interacting with our shadow and our superego and mitigating the desires of our id, our base desires, with our higher conscience. My defense mechanism when I get these strong urges is to sublimate it through creative artistic vision and outlet and output. So if I'm not doing a YouTube video or recording myself speak or drafting a script, I'm writing. So writing is another outlet I have, and I write maybe 2 to 3 times a day. I try to get over 1,000 pages, so maybe I'll do a 500 word, not 1,000 pages, I do maybe 1,000 words a day, 1,500 words a day depending. I do a 450 to 500 word mini essay, and then at the end of the day I write in my journal. I use a Lerchterm 1917 journal with the grids, and I like to write that. I like to write in that before I go to bed after I read, and that's kind of my wind down routine. And I find that by writing and being creative and working on a business plan, doing these YouTube videos, planning out ideas for future videos, setting up my artistic vision, it's sublimating my drives and my urges, and then the urges just dissipate and they lose their power over me. And I'm not fantasizing about the urges. I'm not playing into it. I'm playing into the fantasy or the vision of my potential business down the road, or my YouTube channel, or whatever my vision may be. I'm making sure that I'm acting towards it, and I'm providing my drives and my urges with an outlet. So I hope this video resonates with you. If you like what you hear, give me a like and a subscribe, and check out this video for more.